Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to look right past those postcard perfect columns and manicured lawns to reveal the hidden mechanics of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. You've seen it, 1,000 times on the news, in movies and in your history books. But today, we're going to explore the incredible and honestly, sometimes shocking realities of what it actually takes to keep this iconic building standing. So I want to kick things off by challenging everything you think you know about this place, because its serene facade is actually a carefully maintained illusion. We so often think of it as this fragile piece of history, just sort of frozen in time since the Founding Fathers. But the truth? It's far more complex, a little bit darker, and endlessly fascinating. Section 1, the illusion of permanence. For instance, you've probably heard that classic trivia that it was painted white to hide British burn marks from the War of 1812. Well, spoiler alert, that is completely false. Historical records prove it was coated with a white lime-based wash long before the 1814 fire just to protect the porous stone. And get this, it wasn't even officially called the White House back then. Presidents usually called it the Executive Mansion. Teddy Roosevelt actually just made the popular nickname official a full century later, in 1901. And that brilliantly illustrates another major misconception about its early days. Despite choosing the site and overseeing its construction, George Washington died in 1799, which was a year before the building was even ready. John Adams was actually the very first resident in 1800. So actually scratch that whole idea of George Washington sleeping there. If you're looking for his ghost on a tour, you are definitely in the wrong building. Section 2, built on uncomfortable truths. To really understand this building, we have to expose the uncomfortable truths of its actual foundation. Surviving payroll records prove a harsh reality. The core sandstone structure was physically cut, hauled, and laid by enslaved men. Because the federal government just didn't have a massive workforce, they paid local enslavers directly for the labor. These enslaved workers took on the absolute most dangerous tasks, like quarrying massive stone blocks, and they're listed in the ledgers only by their first names: Peter, Tom, Harry. It's a reality that was officially glossed over for centuries, but their labor is quite literally embedded right there in the walls. Section 3, a hollowed-out steel skeleton. So if those outer stones are original, what about the rest of the house? Well, it has a wildly turbulent history of rebuilding. It was famously burned by the British in 1814, right? Then Teddy Roosevelt rapidly expanded it in 1902. In 1929, Herbert Hoover literally had to abandon a Christmas Eve party to direct firefighters as a huge blaze gutted the West Wing. But the craziest event happened in 1948. Decades of uncoordinated renovations had completely ruined the wooden beams. The floors sloped, and staff reported that chandeliers swayed when someone walked in the room above them. The building was on the verge of total collapse. So here's the wild part. President Truman actually had to move out across the street, and they gutted the entire interior. They scooped everything out until it was just a hollow shell of exterior walls. They dropped in a massive modern steel framework to carry the load, and then rebuilt the historic rooms inside of it. So the building you see today structurally operates a lot more like a mid-20th century office building, just wearing a meticulously preserved 18th century mask. Section 4, the invisible city inside. Inside that steel skeleton operates an invisible, self-contained city. Think about the historic basement kitchen before it was modernized. It looked totally ancient. Believe it or not, the White House kitchen was completely inadequate well into the 20th century. They were still using these massive, outdated coal ranges and dealing with terrible ventilation long after normal modern appliances were available. FDR's housekeeper, Henrietta Nesbitt, did not mince words when she arrived in 1933. She described horrifying conditions. She said she couldn't work up any charm for cockroaches and complained about a wooden refrigerator that just smelled awful. It proves exactly why First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt championed a total, top-to-bottom kitchen modernization in 1935, finally transforming it into a high-efficiency culinary workspace. When you look at historic floor plans, you realize thousands of staff, electricians, florists, chefs work in these heavily compartmentalized zones. Many employees spend years working there without ever seeing the famous ceremonial rooms. Meanwhile, there's this invisible army of curators constantly swapping out historic art and furniture without the public ever noticing, which perfectly maintains that illusion of a place frozen in time. Okay, and to add a little flavor to the chaotic reality of this internal city, presidents historically kept an absolutely bizarre menagerie of dangerous and exotic pets on the grounds. Thomas Jefferson had a pair of grizzly bears. John Quincy Adams reportedly kept an alligator in an unfinished East Wing bathroom. No way, right? Martin Van Buren had tiger cubs, and Calvin Coolidge had a pygmy hippo, plus a raccoon named Rebecca, who was actually sent to be served for Thanksgiving dinner, but he pardoned her and she became a pet with a custom collar instead. Section 5. The Hidden Modern Fortress. But, the days of grizzly bears on the lawn are long gone. Which naturally brings us to a huge question. How exactly do you secure a fragile-looking mansion from 21st century threats without turning it into some ugly military bunker? Let's just trace something super innocent, like a simple piece of mail sent to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It doesn't just show up in a mailbox. It's diverted to Secret Service off-site screening facilities, where it literally takes weeks to undergo rigorous biological and explosive testing before it ever gets anywhere near the actual building. And the physical security of the grounds? Just as extreme. The perimeter actually begins blocks away, with invisible buffers masked as ordinary street furniture. We're talking reinforced benches and heavy planters that look totally normal but are designed to stop a speeding vehicle. The airspace above is heavily restricted, with military jets ready to intercept. And perhaps most impressively, the entire complex can execute an instantaneous, unannounced lockdown in minutes. The building just shifts into a hardened posture without the public on the street ever realizing it's happening. Section 6. More machine than mansion. As we peel back all these layers, a completely new picture emerges. Over the years, the White House has been invasively rewired for basically every communication revolution since the 1800s. Telegraphs, radio for FDR, TV, and now heavily encrypted fiber optics. Beneath the historic plaster are cables rivaling a modern data center. Plus, it operates as a permanently staffed institution. Even if the president is away for months, the staff, the security, the infrastructure, it never shuts down. It is always on duty. So the next time you see that bright white facade on the news, remember, it is not a static, delicate home. It's a highly engineered, deeply complex machine wrapped in a historic disguise. Built by enslaved labor, hollowed out and rebuilt from the inside with steel, and surrounded by invisible urban armor. So what hidden reality of this incredible fortress surprised you the most? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you